The wrench slipped from Roy's greasy fingers and floated away in the zero-gravity workshop. He cursed under his breath and pushed off the workbench to catch it before it hit something expensive. 3 days of nonstop repairs had left him exhausted, but bills did not pay themselves. The dusty Rose needed fuel, and fuel cost credits he barely had. His communicator beeped with an annoying persistence that meant ship trouble. Roy grabbed the device and checked the readout. External power drain. Sector 7. Starboard hull. That made no sense. Sector 7 had nothing but basic plating and a few sensor nodes. Roy pulled up the diagnostic screen and frowned at what he saw. Something massive was pulling power directly from his ship's main grid. The drain was getting worse by the minute. Pirates sometimes attached magnetic leeches to steal power from docked vessels. Roy had dealt with that before, but this reading was different. Whatever sat on his hull was alive. The bioscanner showed a heat signature and a heartbeat. Roy suited up quickly, checking his oxygen levels twice out of habit. The outer rim stations were not places where mistakes got second chances. He cycled through the airlock and stepped onto the hull, magnetic boots clanking against the metal surface. The stars spread out before him in their usual silent beauty. Roy ignored them and made his way toward Sector 7, following the power cables that glowed faintly under his helmet lights. His ship was old and patched in 100 places, but she had carried him safely for 15 years. He knew every panel and bolt. What he found waiting near the starboard thruster array was not something he knew at all. The creature was enormous, easily the size of a small shuttle. Its body was covered in scales that looked like polished black glass, catching and reflecting the distant starlight. Wings lay folded tight against its sides, bound by chains that pulsed with a sickly blue energy. More chains wrapped around its torso, legs, and neck, connecting to anchor points that had been drilled directly into Roy's hull. Roy stopped moving. His breath came faster inside the helmet. This was not a leech or a parasite. This was something intelligent, something that should not exist outside of ancient stories and children's tales. The creature's head lifted slowly. Its eyes opened, revealing irises of brilliant gold that seemed to glow with their own light. Those eyes fixed on Roy with an intensity that made him forget about the chains, the power drain, and everything else. There was intelligence there. There was pain that Roy's suit computer chirped as it received an incoming transmission, not through normal channels, but directly into his emergency frequency. The universal translator struggled with the signal, producing broken fragments of meaning rather than clear words. Help, trapped, dying. The message repeated 3 times before falling silent. The creature's eyes never left Roy's face. It made no aggressive moves. It simply watched and waited that Roy's mind raced through his options. Station protocols were clear about anomalies. Report anything unusual immediately. Let the authorities handle it. Stay safe. Stay out of trouble. But Roy had spent 20 years in space learning that authorities did not always do the right thing. Sometimes they did the profitable thing. Sometimes they did the easy thing. And something about those chains, about the way they pulsed with energy designed to cause pain, told Roy that whoever put this creature here did not have good intentions. He moved closer, carefully examining the chains. The metal was covered in markings he recognized from military contracts he had worked on years ago. Korvathi design. The galaxy's most ruthless enforcement species, the ones who made problems disappear for the right price. The chains were not just restraints. They were sophisticated torture devices, designed to keep the creature weak and compliant. Roy had seen similar technology used on prisoners in the worst kinds of detention facilities. His hands moved to his tool belt before his brain caught up with the decision. If the Korvathi had chained this creature to his ship, they meant for someone to find it. Probably meant for it to die slowly while everyone looked the other way. That was how things worked in the Outer Rim. People saw things, kept their mouths shut, and survived another day. Roy had survived that way for a long time. It was safe. It was smart. But looking into those golden eyes, seeing the hope that flickered there when he moved closer to the chains, Roy found he did not want to be smart anymore, that he pulled out his scanner and began analyzing the chain mechanisms. The creature watched him work, its breathing shallow and labored. Up close, Roy could see wounds where the chains had burned into scales and flesh. Some looked old. This had been going on for a while. The scanner results made Roy's stomach turn. The chains used a harmonic frequency lock, impossible to break with conventional cutting tools. They were designed to resist everything from plasma torches to molecular disruptors. Whoever made these did not want them removed. Roy was still studying the readouts when his proximity alarm screamed to life. 3 ships had just dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of sensor range. Big ships, military configuration. His communicator crackled with an incoming hail on official channels. The voice that came through was cold and precise. Unidentified vessel. This is Korvathi Patrol Command. You are harboring stolen military property. Prepare to be boarded for immediate inspection and seizure of assets. Roy looked at the creature. The creature looked back at him. In that moment, Roy Brennan made a choice that would change everything. He was not going to let them take it. He was going to find a way to break those chains, even if it killed him. Roy climbed back through the airlock faster than he had ever moved in a pressure suit. His mind worked through possibilities while his hands stripped off the helmet and gloves. The Korvathi ships were still 10 minutes out. Maybe less if they pushed their engines hard. 10 minutes to figure out what the chains were and how to break them. He pulled up his computer terminal and started running every analysis program he owned. The chains operated on a frequency lock, which meant they listened for a specific signal pattern. Break the pattern, break the chains. Simple in theory. Impossible in practice without the right codes. Roy had never been good at impossible. Impossible was just another word for something nobody had bothered to fix the right way yet. The communicator hissed again. The Korvathi commander's voice filled the small cabin. This is Commander Seveth of the Korvathi Enforcement Division. You have 6 hours to complete whatever repairs you are conducting and vacate this sector. Any delay will be considered obstruction of military operations. 6 hours. They were giving him an out, a chance to run away and pretend he never saw anything. Roy's fingers hesitated over the keyboard. He could take it, fire up the engines, jump to another system, and forget any of this happened. Except he could still see those golden eyes, could still hear that broken transmission begging for help. Roy opened a channel. This is Roy Brennan, independent contractor. Acknowledged. Beginning departure procedures now. He closed the channel and went right back to analyzing the chains. The data started coming together in pieces. The chains broadcasted a constant signal to his central hub, probably on one of those Korvathi ships. That signal kept the locks engaged and the pain circuits active. If Roy could jam the signal or convince the chains they were receiving the right unlock code, he might have a chance that he did not have military-grade equipment. He had a communications array held together with spare parts and optimism. He had a medical scanner he bought third-hand from Station Trader. He had tools designed for fixing engines, not breaking alien restraint systems. But Roy had spent 20 years keeping broken things running when everyone said they were dead. He understood systems. More importantly, he understood how to make things work when they absolutely should not. His fingers flew across the controls, pulling up specifications for his comm array. It could broadcast on the right frequency range if he overclocked it. The medical scanner could read biological signatures and mimic them if he rewired the output processor. Combine them together, add a feedback loop to create interference. It was stupid. It violated about 15 safety protocols. The comm array might burn out completely. But Roy had stopped caring about smart decisions when he decided not to run. He grabbed his tools and went to work. Panels came off the wall. Wires got rerouted. The medical scanner's casing cracked when he forced it open, but the important parts inside were still good. Roy's hands moved with the confidence of someone who had built and rebuilt systems so many times that it was pure instinct. 40 minutes later, he had created something that looked like it survived a ship crash. Waihun Ava. Circuit boards were stacked and tied together with magnetic tape. The whole assembly hummed with an unhealthy vibration that suggested it might explode at any moment. Roy carried his creation back to the airlock and suited up again. The creature was still there on the hull, exactly where he left it. Its eyes tracked his movements as he approached with the jury-rigged device. "This is going to feel weird," Roy said, knowing the creature probably could not understand him. Or it might not work at all. Or it might kill both of us. I'm not great at speeches, so let's just see what happens. He activated the device. The medical scanner portion reached out and read the creature's biological signature, its heartbeat and neural patterns. The comm array took that data and started broadcasting it mixed with random noise across the same frequency the chains used. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Roy's heart sank, then the chains flickered. The blue energy pulsed erratically, confused by the conflicting signals it was receiving. The harmonic lock tried to verify its commands but kept getting interference that looked like legitimate biological data. The chains flickered again and released. They fell away from the creature's body and clattered against the hull, suddenly inert and powerless. The anchor points that had been drilled into Roy's ship sparked once and went dark. The creature moved slowly at first, as if not believing it was really free. It stretched one wing, then the other. The scales that had looked dull and lifeless began to shimmer with inner light, like someone had lit a candle inside dark glass. Roy expected the creature to fly away immediately. Anyone who had been chained and tortured would want to escape as fast as possible. Instead, the creature turned its massive head and looked directly at Roy. Those golden eyes were bright now, filled with something that looked like gratitude and determination mixed together. The creature coiled its body around the dusty Rose's hull, wings spread protectively over the main sections. A new transmission hit Roy's suit computer, stronger and clearer than before. I stay. We fly together. Roy blinked inside his helmet. You want to stay? They're coming back. There's going to be a fight. The creature's response was immediate. You freed me. I will not leave you to face them alone. Before Roy could respond, his proximity alarms went insane. The Korvathi ships had returned early, and they were not alone. 12 more vessels appeared on his scanner, surrounding his position in a perfect attack formation. The creature's eyes began to glow brighter. Roy's navigation computer suddenly filled with data he had never seen before. A jump coordinate that threaded through an asteroid field his sensors said was completely impassable. The transmission came again, calm and certain. Trust me, I see the way. I have always seen the way. Roy looked at the impossible path on his screen. Then he looked at the creature, whose eyes glowed like small suns. He thought about all the impossible things he had fixed over the years, all the times he made broken systems work through sheer stubborn refusal to give up. Well, he said, climbing back toward the airlock, impossible never stopped me before. He sealed the airlock and ran for the pilot's chair. His hands flew across the controls, firing up engines that rattled and screamed. The Korvathi ships were charging weapons. Roy grabbed the flight stick and aimed his ship directly at the asteroid field that would kill anyone stupid enough to enter it. Then he pushed the throttle forward and trusted the dragon. Asteroids the size of buildings filled Roy's viewport, spinning and colliding in a chaos that made his instruments scream warnings. Normal people would see certain death. Roy saw the path Austral showed him, a thread of safety that wove through the destruction like a needle through cloth. The creature flew alongside the dusty Rose, its body glowing with patterns that looked like living light. Wherever Austral moved, the asteroid seemed to shift just slightly, creating gaps that should not exist. It was not magic. It was something else, some ability to perceive space and movement in ways Roy's limited human senses could not grasp. Behind them, the Korvathi ships tried to follow. 2 of them lasted 30 seconds before asteroids the size of small moons crushed their shields and tore through their hulls. The explosions lit up Roy's rear sensors briefly before the debris field swallowed the light. Sevitha's voice crackled over the emergency channel, distorted by interference. You cannot run forever, human. That creature is Korvathi property. We will hunt you to the edge of known space. Roy did not bother responding. He was too busy following the flight path that appeared on a screen, updated in real time by Austral's guidance. Left, down, roll right, accelerate, cut engines, and drift. Every movement was precise and necessary. One mistake would reduce him to scattered atoms. The remaining Korvathi ships fell back, launching tracker drones instead. Small, fast devices that could follow through space's larger ships could not navigate. Roy's scanner showed 8 of them weaving through the asteroids, closing the distance. Austral transmitted new coordinates. Roy's screen showed a massive asteroid dead ahead, bigger than most space stations. His instruments said it was solid rock. Austral's data said otherwise. There's safety inside, the creature sent. Others like me have used this place. It will hide us. Roy angled toward the asteroid, trusting Austral completely now. As they got closer, he saw what his instruments had missed. A camouflaged entrance, hidden by technology that bent light and sensor beams around it. The kind of hiding place that cost more than Roy would make in 10 lifetimes. He guided the dusty Rose through the entrance. Austral followed, wings folded tight. The opening sealed behind them with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Inside was a fully functional station, carved from the asteroid's core. Docking bays, living quarters, and what looked like a trading post all built into the rock. Ships of various sizes sat in the bays, most of them modified for speed and stealth. This was an outlaw haven, the kind of place people came when they needed to disappear. A grizzled Pelthian appeared on Roy's screen, his 4 arms crossed over his chest. His face was scarred and his expression was not friendly. You brought Korvathi attention to my station, human. I should space you right now. Roy unsealed his harness and stood up, his legs shaky from the adrenaline crash. The Korvathi are hunting my friend. We need sanctuary. Temporary. Just until we can figure out our next move. The Pelthian's eyes shifted to another screen, probably looking at Austral. His expression changed from anger to something like shock. That is a Dralthern. A real one. I thought they were all dead. Almost, Roy said. The Korvathi had been hunting them. Using them. The Pelthian was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed, a sound like wind through broken machinery. My name is Oris. Dock and Bay 3. We need to talk. And you need to understand exactly what kind of trouble you have bought yourself. 20 minutes later, Roy sat in Oris's office while Austral rested in the docking bay, too large to fit inside the station's corridors. The Pelthian poured something that smelled toxic into 2 glasses and pushed one toward Roy. Dralthern are not just rare, Oris began. They're the key to navigation technologies the Korvathi have been developing for decades. A Dralthern can see through space itself, perceive paths that should not exist, sense danger before it arrives. They are living computers that make faster-than-light travel look primitive. Roy's stomach went cold. How many have they caught? 17 over the past 10 years. Oris drank his toxic beverage without flinching. Most died within months. The neural stress of being forced to navigate against their will burns out their minds. Your Austral survived longer than any other. The Korvathi were planning something called neural extraction. They would kill the Dralthern, but preserve its abilities in a computer matrix. Roy's hands clenched into fists. That's genocide. That's profit. Oris corrected. The galaxy knows what is happening. Most choose to look away because Korvathi military contracts are too valuable. A few of us try to help when we can. This station exists because some of us still believe certain lines should not be crossed. Roy thought about the chains, about the pain he saw in Austral's eyes. He thought about 17 others who had died alone and terrified, their abilities stolen before their bodies went cold. Something hot and angry built in his chest. How many are left? He asked. How many other Dralthern are still alive? Oris pulled up a holographic display. It showed a facility floating in deep space, heavily armed and shielded. 3. Held in the Nexus array, a research station the Korvathi built specifically for neural extraction. Security is absolute. Getting in would require a small army. Getting out would be impossible. Roy looked at the display, studying the facility's layout with a mechanic's eye for weaknesses. Can Austral sense them? Can the Dralthern feel each other across distance? The old stories say yes. Oris leaned back in his chair. Why? Because I'm thinking about getting them out. Oris stared at Roy like he had announced plans to breathe vacuum. Then the Pelthian started laughing, a harsh sound that echoed off the metal walls. You are insane. You know, that human? Completely insane. Probably, Roy agreed. But I looked into Austral's eyes when those chains came off. I made a promise without saying words. I'm not leaving 3 others to die when I could do something about it. Oris stopped laughing. He studied Roy's face for a long time, looking for something. Whatever he found made him shake his head and pull up more data files. You humans are all crazy. That is why I like you. If we're going to do this, we need to do it right. We need a crew, supplies, and a plan that has at least a tiny chance of not killing us all. Roy leaned forward, studying the facility schematics. His mind was already working through problems, seeing systems and weaknesses the way he always did. Then let's start planning. Outside in the docking bay, Ashrul's scales pulsed with light. The Drouthren could sense the others now, faintly across the vast distance. 3 voices crying out in pain and fear, waiting for someone to care enough to help. They would not have to wait much longer. Word traveled fast in the underground networks. Within 3 days, Oris's station received 5 new arrivals, all responding to encrypted messages about a rescue mission that should not be possible. The first to dock was a Torth pilot named Sula. She was small and quick, with 4 eyes that never seemed to blink at the same time. Her ship was a modified attack fighter that looked like it had been through several wars. She found Roy in the planning room and put a data chip on the table without introduction. My brother died rather than transport captured Drouthren for the Korvathi, she said. He chose honor. I choose revenge. I can fly anything, and I'm very good at not getting shot. Next came Harvin, a human xenobiologist who looked too old and tired to be planning military operations. His hands shook slightly when he laid out files containing years of documentation. Photos of Drouthren in chains, medical reports describing neural extraction procedures, testimony from witnesses too afraid to speak publicly. I have been collecting evidence for 7 years, Harvin explained. Nobody listens. Nobody cares. Maybe if we free them, people will have to pay attention. The third arrival surprised everyone. A Korvathi soldier named Rix walked off his ship carrying nothing but a rifle and a bag of supplies. Oris reached for his weapon, but Rix held up his hands. I deserted 2 weeks ago, Rix said. I witnessed a neural extraction. I watched them kill a creature that begged for mercy in 17 languages. I cannot serve an empire that does such things. Roy studied the former soldier carefully. Trust was dangerous, especially with someone from the species hunting them. But Rix's eyes held the same haunted look Roy had seen in his own mirror after bad jobs gone wrong. You know the Nexus array? Roy asked. I served there for 6 months before I ran. Rix pulled up schematics that were more detailed than anything Oris had. I know guard rotations, security protocols, in which commanders might look the other way if approached correctly. The crew grew. A Belthian engineer arrived with cutting tools and explosives. A human medic came with equipment to treat injured Drouthren. Each person carried their own reasons for joining what everyone agreed was likely a suicide mission. Roy found himself leading planning sessions despite having no military training. He was a mechanic, not a soldier. But Ashrul trusted him, and that trust seemed to transfer to the others. They looked to him for decisions he did not feel qualified to make. I fix ships, he told Oris one night after a particularly long planning session. I'm not a leader. I do not know how to run an operation like this. Oris poured 2 glasses of his terrible alcohol. You freed a Drouthren using a medical scanner and a communications array. You flew through an asteroid field that killed Korvathi pilots with decades of training. You looked at an impossible situation and found a solution. That is exactly what a leader does. Over the following days, Roy spent increasing time with Ashrul. The Drouthren's communication had improved dramatically since being freed. Ashrul shared memories of a people who rode stellar winds and sang to planets. The Drouthren had never sought conflict, which made them easy prey when the Korvathi found them. We trusted too easily. Ashrul transmitted one evening while they sat together in the docking bay. We believed all species valued life as we did. That mistake cost us everything. Roy thought about his own mistakes, the times he had trusted the wrong people or looked away from things he should have confronted. Maybe trust is not a mistake. Maybe the real mistake is punishing people for having it. Harvin started spending hours observing Roy and Ashrul together. The xenobiologist made notes and ran scans, his excitement growing daily. This bond you have, Harvin explained during a meal break. It is developing faster than any documented case of interspecies connection. My theory is that humans, lacking natural telepathy, have evolved to read emotions and intentions through observation. You instinctively understand what Ashral needs without requiring words. Roy had not thought about it in scientific terms. To him, understanding Ashral was like understanding a damaged engine. You paid attention to the signs, learned the patterns, and responded to what was needed. The plan came together slowly. They would use Ashral's navigation abilities to approach through a sensor-blind zone created by a nearby pulsar. Rix's insider knowledge would get them past security checkpoints. They would extract the 3 remaining Dralthern during a shift change and escape before the Korvathi could organize a response that IT required perfect timing. It required everything to go exactly right. Roy had never seen a plan survive contact with reality, but it was the best chance they had. 0.2 days before the scheduled rescue, an anonymous transmission arrived at the station. No identification, no return address. Just data. Guard rotations for the Nexus array, updated security codes, and detailed facility layouts that matched Rix's information but included recent changes. The message ended with a single line of text. Some of us still have honor. Free them. Someone inside is helping us, Sulis said, studying the data. But we do not know who or why. Does it matter? Roy asked. We have what we need. Rix looked troubled. It matters if it is a trap. The Korvathi are not known for honor or mercy. This could be bait. Roy thought about Ashral, about 3 other Dralthern waiting in cages for a death that would steal their very essence. He thought about 17 who had already died. Sometimes you had to trust, even when trust was dangerous. We proceed as planned, he decided. If it is a trap, we adapt. That is what we are good at. The night before the mission, Roy could not sleep. He went to the docking bay and found Ashral awake, scales glowing softly in the darkness. The Dralthern's presence was calming, like sitting near a fire that gave warmth without burning. Are you afraid? Ashral transmitted. Terrified, Roy admitted. I have never done anything like this. I am a mechanic. I fix things. I do not run military operations. Ashral's large head moved closer. Those golden eyes reflected Roy's face. You fix me. You saw something broken and made a hole. That is what you would do tomorrow. You will fix what the Korvathi have broken. Roy smiled despite his fear. When you put it that way, it sounds almost simple. Nothing worth doing is simple, Ashral replied. But nothing worth doing is impossible either. You taught me that. Roy reached out and touched the scales near Ashral's eye. They were warm and smooth, vibrating slightly with the Dralthern's breathing. In the morning, they would attempt something that could kill them all. But tonight, sitting in the quiet darkness with a friend he never expected to have, Roy felt something he had not felt in years. He felt hope. The Nexus array looked like a metal flower floating in the void, its petals made of armored sections that bristled with weapons. Roy watched it grow larger on his viewport as Ashral guided them through the pulsar's radiation shadow. Every sensor on the facility should be blind to their approach. Should be. Sula flew point in her attack fighter. Rix traveled with Roy on the dusty rows, his knowledge of Korvathi security protocols their key to getting inside. Harvin and the others waited at a fallback position, ready to provide covering fire if things went wrong. First checkpoint coming up, Rick said, his voice tense. He transmitted the security codes from the anonymous message. A moment passed that felt like an hour. Then the facility's automated defenses went green, and a docking corridor opened. Too easy, Sula muttered over the comm. This feels too easy. Roy agreed, but they were committed now. He guided the dusty rows into the docking bay, Ashral flowing through the entrance behind him. The massive doors sealed, and artificial gravity engaged with a thump that Roy felt through his boots. Stay with the ships, Roy told Ashral. If this goes bad, I need you ready to get us out. Ashral's reluctance came through clearly in the transmission. I should go with you. You are too large for their corridors, and they will shoot you on sight. Roy checked his gear one last time. Trust me like I trusted you. The Dralthern scales dimmed, but the agreement came through. Be careful, my friend. Roy, Rix, and Sula moved through the facility with practiced efficiency. The codes worked at every checkpoint. The guard rotations matched the anonymous data perfectly. They encountered only automated systems and a few technicians who barely looked up from their work. They found the holding cells in the facility's core, exactly where the information said they would be. 3 Drouthrn lay in separate chambers, their bodies wrapped in the same painful chains Roy had removed from Ashral. These creatures looked worse, their scales dull and cracked, wings withered like dried leaves. Harvin rushed forward with his medical equipment, already scanning the nearest Drouthrn. This one is Velthus, female, approximately 200 years old. Severe malnutrition, neural damage from forced navigation. We need to work fast. Roy pulled out his modified scanner, the same device he had used to free Ashral. He started working on the first set of chains while Sula watched the corridor and Rix monitored security feeds. The chains released with the same flickering hesitation as before. Velthus's eyes opened slowly, so pale they were almost white. She looked at Roy with confusion and fear. "We are here to help," Roy said gently. "We're getting you out." The second Drouthrn, Corvin, was younger, but in worse condition. The chains had burned deep into his scales, leaving infected wounds that made Harvin curse under his breath. The third, Shale, was the smallest, barely larger than Roy's ship. Her breathing was shallow and irregular. "They are all dying," Harvin said quietly. "Even if we get them out, I do not know if they will survive. Then we make sure the rescue is not for nothing." Roy moved to the second set of chains, working faster now. His hands remembered the rhythm from freeing Ashral. Scan, adjust the frequency, wait for the flicker, release. Corvin's chains fell away. Then Shale's. All 3 Drouthrn lay free but barely conscious, too weak to move on their own. That was when the alarm started screaming. Rix looked up from his console, his face pale. Facility-wide lockdown. All exits sealed. This was a trap. Sevatha's voice boomed through every speaker in the facility. "Did you think we did not track you, human? The Drouthrn emit a signature that cannot be hidden. We wanted you to come. We wanted you to bring the 4th one. Now we have all of you." Blast doors slammed shut across every corridor. Roy heard boots running in the distance, dozens of soldiers converging on their position. They were trapped in the heart of an enemy facility with 3 dying Drouthrn and no way out. Sula checked her weapon. "I can hold them for maybe 2 minutes. Then we are all dead or captured." Roy's mind raced. There had to be a way out. There was always a way out. He just needed to see it like he saw solutions in broken engines. Find the weakness. Find the leverage point. Then Ashral's voice filled his head, stronger than ever before. "Roy, I am coming. No, they will kill you. They will kill you first." Ashral's presence in his mind felt like warmth spreading through cold metal. "And I will not allow that. Hold on." The entire facility shook. Alarms shifted from lockdown warnings to proximity alerts. On Rix's console, Roy saw Ashral's energy signature blazing like a star as the Drouthrn tore through internal barriers that should have stopped anything. But Ashral was not just anything. And Ashral was very, very angry. The holding cell wall exploded inward. Ashral's massive form pushed through, scales blazing with light, so bright it hurt to look at directly. The dragon moved between Roy's group and the approaching soldiers, wings spread wide in challenge. Then something impossible happened. Ashral's light pulsed once, twice, and suddenly every person in the facility could feel what the Drouthrn felt. The pain of captivity, the loss of family, the desperate hope that someone would care. It was not telepathy exactly. It was empathy made manifest, emotion given form and weight. Roy felt it crash over him like a wave. He heard soldiers in the corridor crying out, not in pain, but in horror at what they had been part of. Some dropped their weapons. Others fell to their knees. A Korvathi commander appeared in the doorway, older than the soldiers and wearing marks of high rank. He looked at Ashral, at the free Drouthrn, at his own troops who could no longer bring themselves to fight. "Stand down," he ordered quietly. His name tag, Redgreth. "I said stand down. That is an order." Sevetha's voice screamed through the speakers. Greth, you are relieved of command. All units, fire on the hostiles. But Greth's soldiers did not move. They had felt what Oshriel showed them. Some lines, once crossed, could not be uncrossed. Greth looked at Roy. Get them out of here. Take the maintenance corridors. I will buy you time. Why are you helping us? Roy asked. Because some of us still have honor, Greth replied. Now go, before Seveth sends units that did not feel what your Dralthern showed us. Roy and his team lifted the 3 weakened Dralthern as gently as possible. Oshriel led the way, tearing through barriers and sealed doors. Behind them, Roy heard weapons fire as Greth and his soldiers fought their own people to protect the escape. They reached the docking bay running. The dusty rows waited with engines hot. Sula's fighter was already launching. They loaded the injured Dralthern into Roy's cargo bay, while Oshriel took position on the hull. Roy, Harvin shouted. The facility's power core is overloading. Someone sabotaged it. Roy understood immediately. Greth's final gift. A distraction that would cripple the station long enough for them to escape. That he slammed the throttle forward. The dusty rows shot out of the docking bay, with Oshriel flying alongside. Behind them, the Nexus array's lights flickered and died. They had minutes before backup power restored weapons and shields. Sula's fighter flew escort, while Harvin worked frantically to stabilize the rescued Dralthern. Roy followed the escape route Oshriel projected, trusting the Dragon's navigation through a debris field that sensors said was impassable. Sevetha's final transmission followed them into the darkness. You cannot run forever, Brennan. I will find you. I will make you pay for this. But Roy barely heard him. He was too busy watching 3 Dralthern start to glow faintly, their scales catching light from Oshriel's presence. They were alive. Weak, damaged, but alive. And for the first time in years, Roy Brennan felt like he had done something that truly mattered. Harvin's documentation hit every major news network simultaneously. Images of Dralthern in chains, medical reports describing neural extraction, and footage from the rescue itself spread across the galaxy faster than light. The networks could not ignore it. More importantly, the public could not look away. Roy watched the broadcast from Oris' station while Harvin tended to the 3 rescued Dralthern. Velthus, Corvin, and Shale were recovering slowly, their scales regaining color as Oshriel stayed close and shared strength through means Harvin did not fully understand. The Korvathi Empire's response was immediate and furious. They declared Roy and his crew terrorists and demanded their arrest for theft of military assets and destruction of government property. Several council members supported the demand, citing the economic importance of Korvathi contracts. But other voices rose in opposition. Small species who had always feared the Korvathi suddenly had evidence of what that empire was capable of. Public protests erupted on a dozen worlds. Trade ships refused to dock at Korvathi stations. The Terran coalition faced the hardest choice. Disavow Roy and maintain relations with the Korvathi, or support him and risk consequences. Roy did not expect support. He was just a mechanic who had made a choice. Nations did not go to war over mechanics. Then the coalition's ambassador released a statement that shocked the diplomatic community. Roy Brennan acted independently, but he acted with the conscience that humanity holds sacred. We will not surrender him to face charges for preventing genocide. The galaxy fractured along new lines. Some species stood with the coalition. Others sided with the Korvathi. The rest watched and waited to see which way the balance would tip. Meanwhile, something unexpected happened with the rescued Dralthern. As Velthus grew stronger, her natural abilities returned. She could sense others of her kind across vast distances. What she found made her scales pulse with emotion. There are more, she transmitted to Roy one evening. Not many, but more than we thought. The 17 captured were not the last. Others survived by hiding, by staying silent and invisible. They are scattered across the galaxy, alone and afraid. Roy felt a weight settle on his shoulders. He had freed 4 Dralthern. The galaxy contained dozens more who needed help. Can you sense where they are? Some. The ones close enough. Velthus's weak transmission grew stronger. They felt what happened at the Nexus array. They felt hope for the first time in years. They are waiting for someone to find them. Oris's station became something it was never meant to be, a sanctuary. The Pelthian grumbled about the attention, but began expanding the facilities. Ships arrived, carrying supplies, volunteers, and refugees from Korvathi persecution. Species who had looked away before now wanted to help. Sula recruited pilots. Rix began training former soldiers who had deserted rather than participate in atrocities. Harvin established a medical facility. What started as a small crew became a movement. Roy found himself at the center of something he never wanted. People looked to him for leadership and decisions. He was still just a mechanic, but he was a mechanic with a Drouthren who trusted him and a crew who believed the impossible was worth attempting. 6 months after the Nexus Array rescue, Oshral sensed a distress call. Another Drouthren, trapped and dying in a mining colony 3 systems away. Roy did not hesitate. He fired up the Dusty Rose's engines, and Oshral coiled around the hull like always. They were not alone this time. Sula flew escort. A medical ship carrying Harvin followed close behind. The movement had grown enough that rescue operations could be coordinated and supported. The pattern repeated itself across the following months. A Drouthren found in a black market auction, rescued by a Pelthian merchant who had seen the broadcasts. Another freed from a research vessel by Torth military units who staged a mutiny. Each rescue inspired others. The impossible became routine. The Korvathi Empire did not collapse overnight, but cracks appeared in its foundation. Trade partners withdrew. Member species revolted. Seveth was court-martialed by his own people, desperate to distance themselves from the scandal. Greth and the soldiers who helped the escape formed a new Korvathi faction, smaller but committed to redemption. Not everyone changed. Some species still valued profit over ethics. Some still looked away. But enough changed that the galaxy shifted, just slightly, towards something better. Roy sat in the Dusty Rose's cockpit one evening, reviewing maintenance logs that never seemed to end. Oshral rested on the hull, as always, a constant presence that had become as familiar as breathing. 3 other Drouthren circled the ship playfully: Velthus, Corvin, and Shale, fully healed and testing wings that had been withered months ago. A 4th, a young one they had rescued last week, watched the others with cautious hope. His communicator chirped with an incoming message. Another distress call. Another Drouthren in need. This one was being held by a private collector who claimed legal ownership. Roy looked at the coordinates and started calculating jump routes. It would take 4 days to reach the location. They would need to research the collector's security. They would need to plan carefully. Oshral's transmission carried warmth and determination. "You're thinking too hard. We'll find a way. We always do." Roy smiled. The dragon was right. They always found a way, even when the way should not exist. That was what humans did. That was what people did when they decided some things mattered more than safety. He plotted the coordinates and transmitted them to Sula and Harvin. Within an hour, their ships were ready to go. The crew had grown accustomed to sudden departures and impossible missions. Roy sealed the cockpit and ran through pre-flight checks. Oshral shifted position on the hull, wings spreading slightly in anticipation. The other Drouthren took up escort positions, their scales glowing with the same light that had guided Roy through the asteroid field all those months ago. The galaxy had not become perfect. Evil still existed. Suffering still happened. But scattered across the stars were people who had decided to care, to act, to make impossible things possible. Roy engaged the engines. The Dusty Rose shuddered and came alive under his hands, familiar and reliable despite her age and patches. He had spent 20 years keeping her flying when everyone said she was finished. He had spent 6 months freeing creatures that everyone said were beyond saving. Impossible had stopped meaning what it used to mean. The jump coordinates locked. Roy's hand moved to the throttle. Oshral's presence in his mind felt like coming home, warm and certain and right. 4 other Drouthren flew alongside, living proof that one mechanic's choice to help had changed everything. Somewhere in the darkness, another Drouthren waited. Alone, afraid, hoping someone would care enough to come. Roy pushed the throttle forward. The stars stretched and bent. The dusty rose jumped to faster than light, carrying a crew that had learned the most important lesson the galaxy had to offer. Point one person could not fix everything, but one person could fix something. And sometimes, something was enough to start a change that spread across the stars. Together, they flew toward hope.